Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm dialing in all the way from Fife. We've got Sean. Sean Conley's dialing all the way in from Australia. What time of the night is it over there, Sean?
It is 1:30 in the morning right now. So if anyone wants to know what tomorrow's Wordle is, I can let you know.
Brilliant. The boy is ahead of the game. I think when anyone was moaning about the kickoff times during the American tour, we remembered our friends in Australia and further afield who do this on a full-time basis to watch Celtic. And by the way, it was a super Celtic today, wasn't it?
Oh, we were great. Great, mate, from the start to finish. There was a little bit of slackness creeped in after the subs and after the third goal. We got a little bit casual, intensity dropped, but it picked back up again. And look, we were sensational first half. We were great second half. What was curious, first half we were really great at working in those tight windows, great passing, great first touch, great invention, imagination, and movement, as we mentioned before. And then Kilmarnock kind of came out a little bit in the second half, not like massively, but it opened up for us in the counter attack. And the man who was the least involved in the game in the first half absolutely dominated Kilmarnock for the 15 minutes before he went off injured, and that was Kuhn. So what you saw when the game opened up, he got really into it, and we were counter attacking with his pace, with his touch, and yeah, there was a deflection, but he definitely deserved the goal for the run and some of the play he was having before that.
You know, we said that at half time, didn't we? Just leave them on, let them play through it. We'll go through the goals. We'll go through some of the performances. And it was topped off nicely by a fourth goal by Ralston. Let's start with Tony, right? And we'll work our way back the way. I've said on this show many's a time, he's my favourite player, Sean. You know, it's not about like the flair and the entertainment. I just look at his journey. I know it sounds a bit corny at times, and what he had to put up with. It must have been difficult. But people say he's a footballer, gets paid good wages, get on with it. He plays for Celtic. He went through a period of 18 months of not kicking a ball for Celtic. Postecoglou brings him in. I thought he was a revelation in his first season. And then not a first pick since, but a very good squad player to have at your disposal. And he comes on there, and what a finish, by the way, right? It was an excellent finish from a tight angle. But what I love, I'm guessing he was gesturing up to his daughter, because every time he gets an interview or whatever, he just keeps saying that whatever he does, whatever he achieves, is for his kid. And I love that. He's a humble guy. I think he would be a very good role model, and fair play to the Bricky he got on the score sheet.
Yeah, I definitely think that, and you know yourself what it's like having a kid, and you do your life does kind of revolve around him. So, and he's become a different player since then. So I think it's probably just changed his perspective on things, and he has been a really great player for us since then. And to the point where, like, I wouldn't say he was better than Johnson. Johnson looks a little bit off, but you know, like he had a very short preseason, right, didn't he? So Johnson's not quite fully back yet. Best right back at the Copa America, so I don't, you know, I give him a minute, right? But Ralston did look good. He actually kind of over-egged it a little bit at the start, but he settled into it and he looked great, and very happy to have those two as our right backs, even going into Europe.
Yeah, I remember it was his first big contract. I'm sure it was Brendan Rodgers that gave him it. And of course, he had that run-in with Neymar. And I don't think that aged well. People think you're cocky coming through as a kid. He's knuckled down. I think he's a very, very good squad player. He deserved his call-up and his performances for Scotland. Fair play to Tony Ralston. Now, in the first couple of streams today, there was a few glitches at my end, and Sean was unbelievable and just picking up the baton and running with it. So hopefully we've sorted that out. I'm really keen to get your thoughts on that game. We win the game 4-0. We're top of the league. Hatate opens the scoring. Scalesy is the second goal scorer, followed by Kuhn, who Sean and I said keep him on. And then, of course, Ralston wraps it up. There's a few other things to talk about. The performance of that midfield trio was outstanding. Schmeichel playing the ball quickly, didn't have much opportunities, but when he did, it worked really well. Poor officiating. I'm going to talk to Sean. I like talking to Sean about that, because sometimes obviously I've got a bit of a bias. I know that. I'm biased towards Celtic. I'm a Celtic fan. Sean has got the experience of refereeing. I'm going to get past this one, then we'll start off with the positives. I thought the officiating was dreadful today. We were watching the game yesterday, and we were sharing our thoughts in the group. We didn't all agree. I thought it was a penalty against Rangers. Not everybody in the group agreed with that. And I just kind of thought if we're up against it and it comes down to decisions, Sean, I'm still of the view that it won't go our way. I thought that Donnelly got away with far too many niggly tackles today, and fouls rather. I thought that the Kyogo situation was a penalty unless they're telling us it was offside. There was a moment where Innes Cameron handballs the ball in front of the ref. He just waves play on. They're getting pumped 3-0, just play on. I thought it was really... What was your take on it?
Yeah, I think at 3-0 there was a couple of slack moments from the referee at that point, kind of sympathy ones. Like the one where they get the throw in and then the guy steals 20 yards and it goes out for a corner and they absolutely see if they score from here. The refs had a stinker there. The one thing I would say though is Alistair Johnson should have picked up a yellow card and he didn't. So it can almost, it's not quite as even and out with the Fraser Murray one in the first half, but I thought that all of those should be yellow cards. I thought the one on Palma was stinking. Like it didn't look with the angle from behind, which to be fair to the referee, the angle from behind is the referee's angle, and I thought it was okay. I thought it was a good call. It was borderline yellow card, but when you come around and see the other angle, and this one's actually not in the ref, this one's actually on VAR. When you come around and see the other angle, he's absolutely folded Palma's ankle with his studs, and that one really should have been looked at by VAR. That one could have been a red, to be honest with you. That could have been ankle ligaments. That could have been months out. I was surprised to see Palma sprinting again after that. I thought he was done. The penalty, stonewall, absolute stonewall penalty. I don't know. They're saying that it wasn't. It didn't look offside to me. It looked very close, but it was. It didn't look offside. But then it looked like the referee on the pitch said something about offside to one of the other players, but then no free kick for offside. I don't know. It was very confusing. I don't understand why there was a delay and then nothing really communicated. So they delayed it, looked at it, and then didn't give it. I didn't get that. It should have been a penalty.
Yeah, I'm glad you've confirmed my bias. I thought it was a penalty. And sometimes I think, and I've said this before, sometimes that there's a feed going into the commentator team's ear, and they were talking about the offside, and I'm thinking, is that what they're using to get away with this decision? But yeah, I thought it was someone. Who was it that predicted 4-0 at the beginning of the game? Somebody in the comments.
There was.
So well done. I agreed with you, but it was your shout, 4-0 Celtic. Let's get into the comments before we get to some of the other performances today. We're all delighted with that. James Pearson comes in. VAR are an absolute disgrace. Last season, our players were butchered in certain games, and this season it's continuing. Horrible decision, one of which Kyogo could have had an injury. Palma as well. Just on the note of Palma, right? He's one of the guys. I've been on the fence with him, Sean. I think that you can see that there's an ability there. He does have technical attributes, and he scores and he creates goals. He's never had the consistency that I think Brendan Rodgers wants. I don't think he's had the tracking back defensive qualities that Rodgers wants. But in this summer, I was watching the pre-season games. I thought he looked leaner. He seems, he obviously, he's a flair guy. You didn't want to take all that away from him. He scores goals and does dances. So what, right? But I do think that he might be finely tuned, and we might end up getting a decent enough, if not a first choice, a decent enough squad player at Lewis Palma.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. I'm still waiting for him to really put it together. There was times last season, particularly just in the first half of the season, where like his final ball just looked sensational, but his movement wasn't great. And today, his movement was pretty good, but his final ball was pretty poor, which is so. If he can put those two things together, and then add in the off the ball stuff that we need, then we could have a really good squad player. I do worry though that he's got a bit of the Campbells about him with the social media stuff. I do worry that his focus is off the pitch as well. I'm not saying it is. It's a concern for me. The Campbells, the Thiago Holmes, and I think you and I are of an age, Paul, where we just don't really empathise with that kind of mindset. So maybe it's us that's wrong.
You're right.
No, the Simpsons being right. No, Seymour, it's the children who are wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, I'm going to share an example here. I'm going to go right back, first of all, to remember the West Ham game where they pumped us in the pre-season and we were all a bit worried. And it was the last time Lee Griffiths was ever seen in a Celtic jersey. He was booed. And we remember why he was booed. And it's all down to the use of social media back then. And I said, get them off social media. But there was a big discussion about it because it was like, right, okay, there's a brand thing. There's different contracts they might have where they're pushing stuff on their socials. They get a massive following. and it becomes a huge part of their own profile. So I get it, absolutely get it, and it's a different generation. But my good lady did work for a spell in a practice in Glasgow, which was visited on a regular basis by young footballers in and around the Glasgow area who would, early 20s, Sean, come in for injectables, let's just say, and they would give themselves old selfies for their Insta. And I remember my wife coming home and telling me this, and I couldn't believe my ears. I'm thinking, can you imagine these guys in the mid 80s getting away with that? Now, I know you had Charlie Nicholas with no socks and, with the sleeves of his suit kind of pushed up to his elbows and all this stuff. But this takes it to another level. And I don't think Rodgers likes that either. There's been a few occasions, isn't there, where players have got on the wrong side of him. Palmer, knuckle down, son, stick to the football, and I'm pretty sure you'll be fine. The opening goal, Hatate, we spoke about him at half-time. I thought he was outstanding today, Sean.
Yeah, he was. And I think when that kind of slack 65 to 75 minute spell, which, and again, to be clear, we were sensational for 70 to 80 minutes of the game, but that kind of slack 10, 15-minute window was one where the window where Hatate was missing a few, and he was trying a couple of things that were never on. And I think Scales was actually missing a few at that point as well. So even though those two were two of the best players on the pitch, when we dropped in those 10 minutes, it was those two that were the most noticeable drop-offs. And they refocused, which was great. But I do wonder if, and it's one game, so you can't make a prediction from N of one data, but or datum, excuse me. But I wonder if Hatate is going to be a barometer of when Hatate plays, we play this season, because O'Reilly was sensational today as well, and he's just been so consistent, right, game on game. So it's almost like the other players that when they step up, we really step up as a team, and I wonder if Hatate is going to be our kind of yardstick for that one.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought last year that was going to happen, but for whatever reason, it didn't materialise. Can you remember the old football videos you got, and it was kind of like give you all the highlights of the World Cup and all that, Sean? And there was this move. I'm not sure who Brazil were playing. Someone in the comments will know and be able to confirm. And Perry does that dummy, and he runs around the goalie, and then he hits the ball wide. And it's just one of the moments you think it's one of the greatest misses of all time. Mm-hmm. And we started talking about goals that never were for Celtic. And I think we started talking about it when Jota scored that goal against Motherwell. And obviously the lines, God knows where they got them from. It was an Etch-a-Sketch at Fir Park.
Yeah.
And the goal was chopped off. You look at that there today, and there was two moments that Kyogo was involved in, that if the ball ends up in the back of the net, they're sensational. The first one he made it himself, right? And he dinks it over the goalie. The second one, let's not forget Matt O'Reilly's free kick. That was just a thing of absolute class. And I think what we're seeing there is it's almost as if the middle three are clicking, and Kyogo's actually getting a lot of the fruits of the spoils as well, isn't he?
Yeah. And look, we've not mentioned this guy's name, but with the Kilmarnock change in shape in the second half, McGregor was much more involved in the game. And I think the instruction probably from McInnes would have been, because the way Scales was playing in the first half was he was basically a centre mid. So, and it looked like he'd given the instruction to Donnelly to get closer to Scales to stop him from quarterbacking. And what that meant was it kind of, the guy, he probably came off McGregor to do that job. So McGregor was much more involved in a much more driving force in the second half. So that's great as well, because it's a team game, right? So if one person's not doing it, someone else is doing it. And that's really what you need, because if everyone's on it, then teams can't deal with us. And if one, we talked about Kuhn not being particularly involved, comes out second half, he's great. McGregor he's kind of marked out the game in the first half, and then he's really driving the game in the second half. So this is what we want. This is what we need. So even when teams are adapting, they can't deal with us. We've just got 11 men that are just going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, McGregor's part in that fourth goal, and he took a sore one himself actually in the lead up to it as well. Brilliant. Kyogo looked sharper than attack, says Paul McGurk. He was brilliant today, and he's carrying on his form from the pre-season. Patrick Harold, good to see you again. God bless Tony Ralston. Love to see that. Yes, the man is my hero. If I was a wee guy writing to footballers right now, as I used to do, Sean, back in the day, Ralston would be top of my list. Rob Lilly, if games were going to be staggered for TV, first two should have been Celtic. Of course it should have been. And then the Dundee derby yesterday was an embarrassment to SPL. We don't do ourselves any favours, Sean.
Sunday League football, mate. Sunday League football.
For me, we look at what we've got, and it's a bit like, Celtic, well, all that money in the bank. It's put there largely by the fan base, right? And you look at Scottish football's biggest asset is the fan base. And I've not seen it for a while, but there was a Twitter page that used to put out, the attendances, and they would compare them all around Europe. And Scotland really does have that healthy attendance. But by God, we don't know how to work this game. We don't know how to treat the game of Scottish football. We constantly make big blunders, don't we?
With the scheduling, yeah. Oh, to be fair, Kilmarnock played on Thursday, so this had to be a Sunday game. The 4:30 scheduling when there's no English games on, I don't understand that, to be honest with you. It's obviously an absolute nightmare for me down here. And it's not even the last game of the weekend, so we can't even say like saving the best for last. There's St Johnstone Aberdeen tomorrow. Like, this is just, I don't understand, to be totally honest with you, what they've been thinking with this scheduling. And we don't have a Saturday game until next month. Again, absolute nightmare for me down here. So I'm not a fan of it, to be honest with you. And even before the League Cup draw was made, I was like, bet you that's going to be a Sunday. And here it comes, Sunday, the whole month of Sundays.
Dear me. And that's another thing. I mean, coming into this campaign, we're focusing on Celtic. And I've got to say, throughout the pre-season, because maybe there's been a few issues. We've had a few issues with the recruitment, etc. We've been completely focused on Celtic, which, to be fair, I think we do largely in any case, unless there's something happening in Scottish football that affects Celtic, involving another team. And we've obviously seen what has been happening over Ibrox way and the shambolic nature of that and everything else. And I said, Sean, right, that at this moment, this is when a team who maybe figures that they're maybe the third best team in Scotland need to make a right go at it, because, right, and I'm not saying that it will happen just now, because I don't think they've strengthened sufficiently. But if Hearts were to look at this and say, well, if our ambition was to be second in the league this season, and we feel that ambition would, could be attained with this amount of outlay, this amount of additional investment, then they have an opportunity to qualify for the Champions League the following season through a number of qualifiers. I get it. But there doesn't seem to be that level of ambition. Hibs are another team that I'm very critical of. Bit of a basket case of a club, 10 managers in 10 years. They've shown this weekend, coming into this, that they're as ill-equipped and ill-prepared as they have been for years. These capital sides are perennial underachievers. And sometimes you get that opportunity, Sean, when Rangers this season are weak in very different, a number of different ways. Go for it. Get the investment, get the players in the door, and actually make a fist of trying to be runners-up. I don't think the ambition exists.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought exercise. I did actually think about this the other day, and like, what would it take for Hearts or Aberdeen to push the boat out? I think if you start as like what Aberdeen sold Scott McKenna for $6 million. So if you say Miovski's the best player in the league, he's outside of Celtic, then he's worth $6 million, for example. Hearts are never going to spend $6 million in a player. Work your way down the rest of the league. Luke McCown, $3-4 million maybe. Danny Armstrong, 2.5, something like that. So I think to build a whole squad with the best in Scotland, I think you could argue whether it's a good or bad thing, but basically a Hearts or Aberdeen are really priced out of doing that. Hearts, what they do is they pick up all the best free agents. So anyone, the best players from Livingston or whoever, when they come out of contract, they go to Hearts. They double their money. But Hearts just can't afford those transfer fees in Scotland, and that's kind of the problem.
You're right. Everybody's fishing in the same kind of pond when it comes to players, aren't they? And to get that additional investment to scoop up every summer the 3 or 4 best players from all the other teams, like you mentioned a few there, Luke McCown, for example, they would be great signings for someone like Aberdeen or Hibs or Hearts. But yes, thanks for everybody getting involved. We think Hatate's going to be a big player for this season. Ralston's my favourite, and he gets the 4th goal. What about Scalesy then? We started off this show talking about reinforcements, and of course, we need a centre forward. We're hoping it's Adam Eder. Well, I certainly am. A lot of the comments last week were move on to another striker. But Scales is in a position where we've been talking about another centre half. we have been. Who have we been linked to that you like the look of? Here's some names. In terms of centre halves, Dara O'Shea, centre back from Burnley, 25 years of age. Looking at the rest of them, I think Scott McKenna's probably the only other centre half that we've been linked to, Sean. Is there any of those two that you like the look of?
I won't lie, I don't watch English football, so I don't really know about Dara O'Shea, and I've not seen too many international games involving him. I do like Scott McKenna, but like there's a very strong argument based on today that Scales would have been a better choice in that sort of game against a low block. Based on the way he played today, I'm not. I don't believe that Scott McKenna could have played the ball the way that Scales played it today. Which is not to say Scales is Pelé or anything like that, but like I don't think that's Scott McKenna's strength. I think Scott McKenna's strength is defending. It's sort of flip side of that argument would be Scott McKenna may be a better player for the games where we might be up against it. So. That's a really tricky one because I do like Scott McKenna as a player. I do like him as a defender. I don't think he's good as a ball player as Scales. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's a really tricky one that you need to. Hopefully, I actually would like that there's some third choice out there, but I guess there's also the fact that Scott McKenna would count towards our homegrown quota as well. So, yeah, it's a dilemma, and hopefully someone's getting paid a lot of money to make this decision because I can't.
Well, that would be the head of recruitment, but that at the moment that position is still available. Brown Warrior, Kilmarnock needs resting. Does he? Incredible that Callum McGregor and James Forrest will both burst through the 500 appearance mark this season. And just to put that into perspective, there has only been 12 players in the history of the football club who have played 500 or more competitive games. Yet we have two in this team right now. And I'm delighted, particularly for James Forrest, because it looked even last season that he was on his way. Yet I think he'll comfortably get through that mark, that milestone.
Yeah, it was a strange one last season. Like he looked like he was gone. Like he was just seeing the season out. Like he was getting Chris Commons out the door, but then just came back in and was absolutely pivotal. And the run-in, scored goals in the semi-final, in the league. Like, yeah, there was one point at the start of the second half there where he plays a pass with the outside of his foot into Hatate in the edge of the box. It's a great pass. Honestly, there's a strong argument that he's our best winger, but I think just it's more we've got a good variety in amongst the wingers now. We talked about Palma and his delivery, but Kuhn his pace. Forrest has just got the composure and the reading of the game. And I know we said at halftime that Forrest is on the left because he cuts inside and doesn't have to hit the byline. And then the first thing that happens at the start of the second half is he hits the byline. I was like, oh, okay. But to be fair, he did have a look of regret in his face that I don't think I'll do that one again. So he started coming back inside again. But yeah, he's a legend. I know some people say otherwise, but I don't agree with that narrative. I think when you play that many games for Celtic, you're pretty much a legend, right?
By the time those two guys have hung up their boots or indeed left Celtic, they will be amongst the most decorated Celts of all time, Sean. And I think that, people will say football was easier in their day, maybe the latter part of their career, compared to some of the guys that won the trophies in the 60s. I totally agree with that. But they're up there. They've got to be seen as Celtic greats. Henrik McLarsson, great to see the form has continued from pre-season. It doesn't always. That was a big discussion point. People were saying, these games don't matter and all that. I think momentum matters, Sean. You come in with a bounce. If you're beating Man City and Chelsea, going back to our disdain over what Scottish football sometimes does to itself, and they look down your nose at Scottish football and all that kind of stuff, and go out and beat them, I think it does give you a bounce. It gives you a bit of momentum. And I think we could see that today.
Yeah, and I think it probably even carried on from last season, to be honest. I think it's just carried on from then. The two players that looked the least sharp today were the two that were in the Copa America, in Carter Vickers and Johnston. So I think you're right, having that good pre-season does matter because they've obviously missed out on a lot of that. I think Bernardo didn't go off the bench today, but Odin Holm did, and I thought he looked pretty good. And this is part of Holmes' modus operandi is that he does come off the bench and look a player, then he gets a start and disappears. So I'm not going to start saying that he's arriving as a player yet, but he looked tidy. He looked good when he came on. A couple of good flicks and touches. And because Bernardo's missed the preseason, he's sitting on the bench. Yeah, so I think it is relevant. I think it does matter, and I think we've hit the ground running. And I'm very, very happy with how we played today. I enjoyed the game. I really did. We looked great, and it fills me with optimism. And I hope we avoid injuries like the couple that had me, biting my lip at the end of the game there, Kyogo and Palma.
I know. And it has been a great day. It starts off with Jim Craig unfurling the flag. Then you've got the great tifo. And then that brilliant performance, convincing wing. We're sitting top of the league. We've already got a couple of points more than our nearest challengers last season, although at this point last season, I think we're 3 points ahead of them. I love scales, says 1888 CFC, always gives 100%. You listen, it's still an important attribute in this day and age. Need a centre forward tomorrow, says Sean Bewis. Do you think it'll happen? It's got to happen this week, I think. There must come
Surely.
There's a coming together at Norwich, isn't there? It's no, they're not going to make up, and he's not going to be their centre forward now. It needs to happen this week, I think.
Surely, yeah. Just give them whatever. Say if he scores a Champions League goal, we'll give you an extra million. Something silly like that, right? But just like we said before the game, Kyogo doesn't play 90, and then he did. So, we didn't want him to play 90. I don't think it was very risky at the end there, wasn't it?
No, this is a thing, and you're looking at the lack of options, and it's so obvious that we need to bring one in. We were talking about it as far back as when Giacomakis was at the club, and we were thinking we need a third striker to come in, but it was short-lived, and then O leaves as well. So yes, we definitely need that striker in this week. Great performance by the whole team, says opinionated Glaswegian, the OG. And we've got Robert Ingram coming in. There are thousands of injectables. Be more specific, please. Listen, guys, it's all that mad stuff that the people put in their face to make them look all fresh and 20 years younger. Everybody's interested what they were injecting. Nothing illegal. That's all I'm going to say. It was not something that would enhance their performance, maybe enhance their looks. I don't know. I remember that Pelé miss. Who was it against, though? King Hodder.
I don't, but I think it was 1958 in Sweden, and right. I couldn't tell you who it was against, though. I believe when he was 16 or 17, first World Cup, maybe. It might be in the second World Cup he played at 21, but I think it was around about 58.
Stunning. 32 shots, says Rambo JP 73. Yeah, 32 shots from goals. Listen,
and a lot of them were just blocked, right? It wasn't like they were it wasn't like they were off target. It wasn't like they were wild shots, like the Scales one that gets blocked on the line. There was a lot of good shots as well,
Well, that's the thing. Scales' shot gets blocked on the line. We hit the bar. Kuhn hits the bar. We had a really, really good penalty shout. It could have been an absolute rout. But let's talk a wee bit about Kuhn. Frustrating first campaign for him, Sean. We then learned that obviously he'd lost a bit of weight. He didn't have his strength due to dental issues. He then has a cracking pre-season. And he returns today. Not a great first half. Makes up for it in the second. He's got this uncanny ability to continually just come inside until he thinks he's got the space, and he'll take on another defender and another defender. And I do hope that he's going to have that impact, because he's been at big clubs before, Sean, and it's not worked out. And you kind of hope now or never for him, because you can be the best player for Rapid Vienna. You can be the best player at that level, but if you come to Celtic and you want to play in the Champions League, there's a consistency, there's a defensive ability that wingers need to have. And from what I've seen so far, I think that, again, I don't think he's our best winger. Is he going to be a first pick every week? Probably not. But I do think he brings something to the table, and he showed it again today.
So you reckon Maeda and Forrest are the first two? Or do you reckon?
I started off saying Maeda and Kuhn, but Kuhn was, that was really just me throwing that one into the mix. Having seen today, and Forrest reminding us of what he can do, probably through consistency, Kuhn will be the second choice, I would suggest. I don't think we're going to see the performance that we've seen against Man City every other week. If we did, he'd be a find of the century. But yeah, I think Maeda and Forrest, because you can rely on them. You know what you're getting.
I reckon in Europe we go Maeda and Kuhn, and in the league we go Forrest and AN other. Broadly speaking, I just think what we seen in the second half there was a real indication that Kuhn is going to be a real threat on the counter with his touch and space, and we all know about Maeda for what he does, and I don't. Forrest might be the one that comes on to kind of get a grip of a game at the end, but I think for Europe when we've got a bit more space to run into, Kuhn may well shine at that point, because he does seem to kind of run out of ideas sometimes when he's up against that low block.
Yeah, it was good to see him getting the goal. He could have smiled though. Mount Cadath, I don't care about anyone's brand. They're employed by Celtic. First ever Celtic player to have an image rights deal written into his contract was Paolo Di Canio. And part of the image rights was that he was to have a music single in his name. Can you remember it? D.I. Canio.
Oh, yeah. The D-I-S-C-O. Yeah.
It was horrific. Stevie Cairns, thank you for supporting the channels. Keep up the good old work, boys from Inverness, Stevie. Nice one. And been up there a few times to do some Celtic gigs. Love for we travel up to Inverness. There is a big difference between the performance and against Ross County a year ago. Players have improved and will continue to improve, but a few new signings would be good. We need them. We definitely do. I've tried to be as balanced as possible, but there comes a point where you just think, right, we must know, right, who we're interested in, who the first choice and second choice left back target is. But then you hear Schmeichel talking about the fact that we did not contact him until 3 or 4 days after they were knocked out the Euros, Sean. And
yeah,
it worries you a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does. And yeah, there's a lot of opacity to it, but then there's also things coming out in the media that have been fed. So the truth is probably somewhere in amongst that area. There's no smoke without fire kind of thing. Yeah, I think we need a better infrastructure. We need to be putting more man hours into this. It can't just be Michael Nicholson and Brendan Rodgers try to work this out themselves. Rodgers has got enough to do already. I'm sure Michael Nicholson's got other work to do. Let's get a proper infrastructure here. Let's get some bodies moving. And we don't need a lot of bodies. That's a great thing. Our starting 11 today is a very strong starting 11. But if O'Reilly goes, all of a sudden we're not looking as hot.
No, you're spot on. Henrik McLarsson, Di Canio was catchy. Well, I've actually thought, Henrik, that we released the single 2 years ago now. And for one day, it was actually above Mariah Carey in the charts at Christmas time. So that's my claim to fame. But we never ever released a physical copy of it. And I was talking to a few guys over the weekend, and the suggestion was we should have a 7-inch vinyl, limited edition of The Glory and the Dream, probably a green vinyl or something. So we're going to look into that this year as well. We'll make them numbered, we'll get them signed, and all the funds will go to charity. Alexis Buchanan, good interview with Brendan. He looks confident and focused. That's what we like to hear. Confident and focused was my Wi-Fi in the third stream of today. Not so much in a second, but we got there. We got there, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. If you haven't done so already, give us a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. And next Friday, we have another Excel actually on This Is Acsom. You're going to love it. All that's left for me to say, Sean Connolly, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.